In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how we can use the geometry brush inside of Unreal Engine and then take that and push it into ZBrush so we have a predictable surface that we can start to sculpt on. So the problem is if we have a project like, let's say we're pushing this into VR, to be able to just start sculpting inside of ZBrush and then have an understanding of the scale and the layout is going to be super difficult, if not impossible, right? You could sculpt something, you could bring it into UE4 and then rescale it and everything else like that, but it's probably not the best way to work, right? What we can do, Unreal's got some tools in there already for creating geometry. So if we go to this area and we go to basic, you can see we can make some basic shapes. We've got the possibility to make cubes, spheres, cylinders, cones, planes. And using that, I think, is going to be a much better process for being able to put that geometry directly in here and then jumping right into VR. So like if you have your VR headset on and everything, you can just jump directly in there and then you can check out what this geometry is going to do for you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hide what I've already created because this is the layout that I want to produce here. So I'm just going to go ahead and hide the folder that I made for this and then just start off with this. So I'll go ahead and take a cube and then drag it out into the center, and then I'll put this at 0, 0, 0, just like this. And on the scale, let's try 2 by 2 right here. Actually, I think I probably want it maybe even larger than that. So this is what I'm considering. Maybe the player is sitting right down below here on the grid, and then so this just kind of sticks up a little bit from the grid. If we want, let's go ahead and put this at, let's say 0.5 like that, and then if we raise this up here, and I'll put this on 25 just like that. Okay, so that's how we can make a cube just like that. So this method of creating things, if we just drag out again a sphere, we can control that, the size. These are actually just static meshes. So if you just want to play around with static meshes, it's possible to do that. But what I'm going to show you is with the builder brush that they've got, and if we use that type of geometry, we have the ability to scale faces, move edges. So it's almost like a little bit like modeling a little bit. So if we go to geometry and we drag a box out this time, and then we put this at 0, 0, 0 like this, just like we have it set to additive, so it's going to be adding these shapes together. Let's just go ahead and let's do 2 by 2 for this, and I think that's going to be a good scale here. I'll go ahead and do 0.5 for this one as well, and then take the whole thing and move it up to where it sits on the grid. Now the scale is a little bit different than that box that we just pulled in, so if I do 0.25 like that and pull this up, and then we push this here to, again, 25 like this, it's a little bit closer to what I was expecting. Now I'm just going to go ahead and group this real quick because I'm going to probably duplicate some of these. So I'll call this builder brush, and I've already got one of them, so I'll just make this builder brush 2 like that. Okay, so we can select these and we can move them around. You can see it takes a little bit of time to build. So they've got cone cylinders, they've got stairs and everything, so it makes it really nice for just laying things out. But if we want to go ahead and edit these things and manipulate them on a face, vert, or edge level, we have that possibility. Before I do that, I'm just going to duplicate this one real quick. I'm going to right click on it, and we can go to edit and just duplicate, which is Control W. So let's just go ahead and move this one down, and instead of this being 2, I'm going to do 4 by 4 like this, and I'll just go ahead and push this down just a little bit. So we have that negative 25 right there, like that. Okay. All right. So I think this is pretty good as far as the play space. I'm gonna probably do one more level down, but I'm gonna make this maybe a little bit thicker. Let's do 0.5 and then move this down. and try to get it right there. So this will be negative 50. And then I'll go ahead and duplicate that again. Control W was the hotkey for that, and now I can move this one down. And let's go negative 100, and then I'll make this one a little bit larger. So let's do 6 by 6, and that's maybe a little bit too large. So I'll do 5 by 5 right there like that. And I think that's looking pretty decent for what I'm hoping for here. Okay. Let's just go ahead and move this down and see if we can get this to build a little bit more. Do negative 100 like this. Now, I'm not quite sure if it's being interfered with by like some of these here, so let me just hide those. And I don't think that's necessarily what's going on with that. But let's get to the point where we can start manipulating the face on here and change the scale of it. So if we go to this mode, we can go to brush editing like this, and then it'll allow us to pick a vertex, and we can move vertices in. If we select a face, we can select faces, or we can take an edge, and you can move an edge like this. So I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to select the face on here, and depending, I might have to change my view to get that face to select. And now I can scale this in a bit like this to give it a nice little angle. So I'll go ahead and do that one, and I'm going to do this brush like this as well. And then I'm going to try to come down here on the bottom and then just scale this one out like this a bit. Okay. And I'm going to take a look real quick and find out why it's hiding some of this. So I understand what was going on. I already had some shapes that were made in that previous folder and I hid them. So it was causing some visibility issues with these new shapes that I was making. So sorry about that, but I just learned something new myself about why these shapes might be building. So they are building all as you update the options on here. So yeah, so that's why that was being interfered with. So I like this layout. I think what I want to do is I want to create a slope that goes down through here like this. So again, I can just drag out another box like this. And then this one, I'm not going to be super specific about exactly the height and width and everything else like that. I'm just going to try to eyeball it and get it within shape here. So we'll try to push this over like this. And what I want to do is build an angle, and I can turn off angle snapping and grid snapping and scale. You might find that whenever you're doing more of these freeform shapes that you're going to want to do that. So I can put it on scale, and right now it's on object space scale. We could scale it. Actually can't scale that in world. So it recognizes the rotation of the object, and it's going to let me scale in this dimension. Just like this here. And okay, so that's still pretty big. Hitting spacebar so I can switch between move, scale, and rotate. And I definitely want this to intersect with this and maybe just come down just a little bit within here. So it's just a matter of pushing and pulling these shapes like that. Now I am in like the object mode for this. And if I wanted, let's just say I'm happy with this shape, but I want to pull this out a little bit more. Let's go to the brush editing part, and then I could take this face that's on here. That might be difficult to grab, just that one. So if I go inside of it, it looks like I can grab that a little bit easier. And so then I can visually keep pulling that out until I get my slope, and I wanted it to hit right about here. So I'm not too concerned about having these line up exactly, because I'm going to push this as a shape, push it into ZBrush, and then I'm going to start sculpting on this thing. So I'm going to turn it into something that is supposed to look like more like natural terrain and got rocks and stuff like that on there. So this doesn't really matter too much. It's just more about getting this shape on here. So again, I can play with the verts on here, and I can manipulate that as a shape. I don't want that really sticking through. That's starting to stick through there like that. But I did want it tapered a little bit on this like that. So I think that's starting to work like this. So I can go back out of this mode, and let's click mode. And I have been having a thing with the interface where it's had to restart Unreal because of this. Okay, hopefully this doesn't happen to you, but I had to restart. I have had some odd things lately going on with the interface with Unreal. But you can see the hotkeys. If you can remember, the hotkeys for this is at least Shift 1 for select, and then brush editing is Shift 4. So I'll do Shift 1. Let's try that. I'm in this mode, Shift 1, that'll put me back into here, and then if I do Shift 4, that puts me in this mode here as well. Okay, so all I wanted to do was take this, and I wanted to duplicate this. So looked like the hotkey for that was Control W, so we can duplicate that way, and then drag off. Should be able to hold down Alt and then drag a copy as well. That's another way that you can duplicate these objects like this. So I've got this, and I'm going to put on rotate. I'm going to put it back on the snapping for this. I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees, and then this time I'll push it here. I want to keep this taper, but I want to keep it on the outer side. So there is a tool within Unreal. We can mirror along the x-axis like this. So we can right click and say transform, and I'll say mirror x like that. And I just follow this little icon down here to help me know which way I'm trying to which way I'm trying to flip there. So I'm going to take this and just push it back. Again, I'm not going to be super worried about exactly where these things fall, because I'm going to be sculpting on top of this inside of ZBrush. So I'm just going to push that inside of there. Like that, and then I think what I'm going to do is make one more of these, so I can either hit Control W or hold down Alt and drag out a copy, and then I'll rotate this. And I'm not going to do anything too fancy with this. It is possible that we could do some negative shapes into these instead of positives. Maybe we can try to see what that looks like for just creating a hole in this, but I'm going to get that right there. And then push this over into here a little bit, like that. And again, why I think this is pretty powerful is because we could be testing this out right now with our headset and everything, and checking and make sure everything works the way that we would expect. Okay, I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate that, Control W, and then I'll move it right here like this, and I'm going to shorten it, push it back here in the back like this, and then Shift 4 will put us in that editing mode right up here. So I'm going to grab the face of this one and then just push it over like here. I'm going to grab the face of this one and then push this like right there, like that. And then I'm going to grab the edge of this and then taper that in. Now I could get in here and get the bottom face of this, and I could just raise this up a little bit like this. So let's just push this in just a little bit like that. And again, what I was saying is that we could also do a negative shape. So if I hit Shift 1 to go out of that mode, we've got this selected. We can hit Control W, move this up. Let's just scale this. Let's scale this one down, scale it up like this. just to make it a bit more obvious what it is that we're doing. And I'll just push it in just a little bit like that. Instead of doing additive, let's do subtractive. And you can see it's basically going to be a Boolean shape for us, which is pretty cool. Still do Shift 4, and I should be able to manipulate this and then grab the face of this. And if I scale that in, I can do a taper that way. Let's grab this, move this down so we can really play up on that taper angle. I'll do Shift 1 to get out of there, and then let's select this and scale it up. Just like that. So I'm just going to push it off the backside because I know that could cause an issue later. Okay, so this has actually got collision geometry on it and everything else like that. So this should work with your collision and everything at this stage. The problem that I've seen with this, I don't currently know how we could control the visibility of this, so if we go into game, it's still going to be visible. Now I do want, if I wanted to use this for collision and not have it be visible, it's possible that we can convert this to geometry. So if we selected this and exported it out right now, if we went to File, Export, we can export this out as a FBX, but it's going to send this over as separate objects. So that's one way that you can do it. The other way that we can do it, we can take these and we can convert them into actual geometry. So if we open up this area with our brushes selected, we can say create static mesh, and it's going to ask you where do you want to store them to. I've already got an area that I've put in meshes for this, so let's call it like builder brush block out version 2, like that, so you can name it whatever you want and say create static mesh, and it's going to go ahead and save a static mesh for you. It takes the pieces and it replaces them for you with that new object. So this is a new object. I'm not too thrilled about this. I would like for the location of this to be zeroed out, but this is what it is for this. Now at this point, if you wanted to use the collision of this and then change the visibility, you can see the collision is set to block all dynamic, and then visibility, we could tell this to be hidden in game, and so we could turn out the visibility so we don't have to even see it in the editor if you want. But just to remember that it's there, you might want to do that. So now if I bring all my objects back that I had, like this, and let's pull this in here like this. So now if I hold down Control and click play, because I've got this set in VR, if I move out of this geometry, you can see that I would have all the visuals of what I visually wanted to see, but it's still going to have the collision working for me. So that's one way that we can get this set up and we can get the collision working. Okay, now I know I've already got a piece of geometry in here, and that might be a little bit confusing for you. So if you're just starting off, you're just going to have this block, right? And then now with this block, I'm just going to put this in this folder here. With this block, we can export this out. So we could either go to File and say Export Selected, or you can even come down here. Now that it's a new thing, we could say Save. If you want to check out what the static mesh of that looks like before we do anything, you can take a look at it there too. So I believe you can maybe export it from here, but I don't know. So we can definitely come here and then right click and say Asset Actions, and we can export it there. Again, we can come up here and export it too. So whatever you want to do, I'll just go from here and say Export. And then I've got an area where I'm starting to save things out at, and so I'll call this Builder Brush Block Out, and I'll do version 2 like this. Okay, and I'll just save it as the FBX. Go ahead and export that out. Okay, and now I'm going to hop over to ZBrush, and then we'll take a look at ZBrush. Okay, inside of ZBrush, I want to first get the scale established, and we could just go and then find their Polymesh 3D. This is like their default model that just can never be destroyed or whatever, and it's just there. It's like their base primitive. So we can just start with that, and then we can go ahead and append. Let's go ahead and append a cube 3D like this, and this will take this cube, and I don't think it's a 1x1 unit. I think it's a 2x2 unit. So here's what I found, that ZBrush has got more of an internal like generic scale, and we can turn that scale into other scales and make sure that like our brush sizes still work correctly with the objects and things like that. So if we go to the Z plugin area, I'm going to take it and just dock it over here to the left. So we can just open this up, and then we can go to Z plugin, take that, and move it over and dock it over here. There is a scale master, and so what we can do is say set scene scale. So it's going to, I know that this is a like perfect cube. I want to work in, I'm going to take it from millimeters to meters. So I'm going to go from 2x2x2 millimeters like this, and then what I can do now is put this at 200 by 200 by 200, and then say resize subtool. It's going to give me this error, resizing solid subtools based on the selection dimensions larger than 100. So it just needs to do this unified thing behind the scenes and then scale it up. So do you want to continue? Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. So now this should be set for us, and if we pull something in that is set in meters, so I've already done like a test on here, and I can go and append. I'll go ahead and append like this this ground plane that I started sculpting. So this should be our environment that we have, right? And again, that's a 2 meter by 2 meter cube, so it's a pretty decent size cube in the center of our world. But we know that this is starting to work. So in order to just test this out, I'm going to go ahead and delete that shape out. I just appended it in to show you that it's working. Again, we can go back to the star that they've got, and we're going to go ahead and import in. So we can go here and import, or you can go use the FBX import export plugin. Doesn't really matter. So let's go ahead and say import, and then I'm going to go and search for that new block out that we did. And it's going to take a second. Hit OK. So here's our shape that we have, right? Okay, and it's going to be very simple geometry, but we don't need anything super complex, because what I'm going to do immediately is just turn this into Dynamesh. So I'm going to go, I'll put it at like a resolution of 500, try that out, and hit Dynamesh, and then see how dense that is. It's for something that's going to eventually be super large in the world, that's probably not that much resolution. So let's just put it on trim dynamic real quick and start like messing up our corners and stuff. And so you can see, we can see polygons quite a bit through here. So yeah, this is not that much resolution for something that is going to ultimately be super huge within here. So I'm just holding down Alt and then dragging along here. I don't really need a sculpt on this just yet. Just wanted to show you how we can convert that over. And then now I'm going to do a scale test and just make sure that it's actually working with this. So let's find our cube that we just did, right? And so we had our star, and then here's our cube that's 2 meters by 2 meters. And let's go ahead and append, and let's append in this new block out brush that we just did. And so here we are, just like this. Again, the only thing that I'm pretty certain about that I can see not working right now is this offset that is happening, that was happening inside of Unreal whenever we converted that information over. Okay, so I was able to pause the video and find the workaround for this. So Didn't realize this, but it does matter how we export this thing out. So if I export out from here, like what we did, and say file export, it's just going to look at the object, and the object has its own position data and everything else like that, right? Now, if I take this model and I select it and I export from here, it's looking at whatever the world position is. And right now, the world position is correct, and that's what I want. So if I go File, Export Selected, I'm able to export that out. And what I did was saved a new version. So you can see here's the old one that's not the correct position for us. And then I was able to bring this one in. And you can see this, it's just, I did not convert it over. So we know we've got a different version. I can just rename this. I'll do version 3 like this. And then we can go back to where we're at on here. Let's go ahead and hit append. And then we've got our version 3. So now you can see that this is set in the correct location. We can get rid of this one here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit delete like that. And then now I've got a template that I can start working on. And I can start to sculpt on it. So again, we can go to geometry, we can go to Dynamesh, and I just started at least with about 500 for Dynamesh, and then converting that over. And depending on the resolution that we have, I'm surprised it's actually taking this long to convert it over. Okay, so ZBrush did crash on me multiple times, and I'm pretty sure I understand what is happening right now. So I was trying to use that Dynamesh resolution of 500, just like we did before. But the thing is, because we changed scale, Dynamesh is looking at the scale of the object, and it makes its new topology based off the scale. So since we made this really, really huge, I think it changes that number to 500 to where it's like super, super fine resolution. So what we can do to get around that and be independent of scale whenever we use Dynamesh, there is a plugin within ZBrush, and I would recommend maybe start using this. It's called Dynamesh Utility, and if you don't see that within ZBrush, I'm pretty sure it's part of the program, but maybe if it's not, you just have to download the plugin. I think it's definitely worth getting for sure if it's not within the program. But this will allow you to just plug in a number, and then so let's say I want 1 million polys for this object, or if I wanted 500,000, I do 0.5 like that, and I can say Dynamesh. And what it does behind the scenes is it scales it to some unified scale, and then goes ahead and does the Dynamesh and rescales it for you. So pretty darn sure that's what was going on with everything that was happening to me, and why this was breaking for me at this point. Okay, so that's how we get our mesh in. I'm not gonna have enough time to really do a decent looking sculpt on here, but then this is where I'd start probably taking trim dynamic and tearing down some edges and things like that. So the sculptural process, if I hold down Alt, and I can build this up and fill in some of these cracks and things. So we've got that going. Okay, so we'd be able to sculpt this out and get this to be a really nice shape. The next thing that I think I would do is, before we would push this back into UE4 or UE5, I would take this and then I would use Decimation Master. So on all the tools at the beginning stages when I'm blocking out, or just trying to get everything roughed in, this is maybe not super efficient, but it allows you to get models in at a decent size. Okay, so with Decimation Master, we can go ahead and say pre-process the current subtool, whatever the subtool is that we're working on, and it's got to go through a calculation for being able to reduce the amount of polys on here. So we can do it two ways. We can do percentage of decimation. So if you wanted it to be only 10% of the whatever it was, let's say it was a million polys, You could drop that down to 10% of what that million count was before, or you could do this K poly. So if you put a number of 10 in there, it would be 10,000 polys. So let's just do that. Let's put it down to 10 like this. I'll turn on my poly frame so we can see it actually happen, and say decimate current. Because sometimes if you don't even have the poly frame on, you might not even notice much of a difference at all, and that's what's really cool about it. So it's dropped the model down. It didn't take the 10. Let's do that again. I don't know if I hit enter on there. So say decimate current. So let's take a look at it now, and you can see how much more aggressive it was as far as reducing this thing down. So now I've got this object. It's around 10,000 polys. And then I can go ahead and export this thing out. So let me go ahead and export, and I'm going to go to the area that we were just at before, in the source art area, and I'm liking to store everything in the FBX area. And I'll change that to an FBX, and I'll call this version 4, like this. Save it out. And you can smooth your normals with the FBX exporter. I do like that, and it takes vertex color information, so that's pretty nice. So depending on like what the angle is, like how much do you want it to smooth, you can crank that up a little bit to maybe 30 or so. If you want it to hold more hard edges, then 15 to 10, somewhere around there would be good. So I'm going to hit OK for that, and it's going to export that out. So now I'm going to go into Unreal. And I might as well just stay in the same exact area that I'm at right now with this builder brush thing. I'm going to go ahead and import, and then I'll do this version 4 like this, import it in. And it's going to, I didn't check the options for it for building a material for me. I don't really care if it's got the material. I'll replace that later. So I can click and drag this in, and I'll set it to movable, and I'll put it at 0, 0, 0. And if did everything right, like we're expecting, yep, should go directly over the top of the old one. So I'm just going to hide some of this stuff that you see here. So again, what we had was this model that was our builder brush that will give us our collision, and we set that to where we can't see it. So if I hold on control and then hit play, I can use WASD to fly around and move around. Let me do this real quick. I hid the ground here like this, but it's not going to hide it in game. So anything I want to hide in game, we can go to visibility and then turn that off, and turn off hide in game as well. Okay, so I'm gonna go within here and then zoom out just a little bit. So now you can see we've got our blockout mesh that we used with the tools inside of Unreal, and that's going to give us everything that we need from a play standpoint, and us being able to use that for our collision geometry and everything else like that. And then now we've got a shape that we can start working on inside of ZBrush and start sculpting on, and get this to be more visually appealing, right? So obviously this is going to take a whole lot more work and effort, but this is the beginning stages of this giving us everything that we need to make sure we've got a predictable play space, that we've got geometry working, we've got a pipeline set up, and we can get predictable results whenever we start pushing these shapes inside of Unreal. And it works from a gameplay standpoint too. Okay. So hopefully that's going to give you everything that you need to get yourself started with setting up and establishing scale, and get yourself going to where you feel confident about everything that you're sculpting is going to work out from a gameplay standpoint.